Kilo 5, Mike, Charlie, Yankee. Kilo 5, Mike, Charlie, Yankee.
Kilo 5, Mike, Charlie, Yankee. What's the name, please?
The name here is John.
Roger, John. Okay, what kind of radio you got there, sir?
This is a Kenwood ES690 and working 100 watts on it off of a 40-meter dipole. Probably needs to be a little shorter for this end of the band, but it's raining right now, but not needing any of that today. We're definitely a strong 5 times plus 20 here into central Arkansas. Back to you.
All right, roger that, John. Well, listen, you know, I'm looking at your audio on a VU meter, and I'm thinking that you should be or could be a little fatter if you might be interested in checking that out.
Yes, sir. Let me. You obviously know far more about what I'm using and what we're trying to do than I do. Let me tell you what I got going here. I've got an A-static 10D microphone with a 5-6. It's actually a high-pitch microphone, and I've got a transformer between it and the radio that's got it down to low MP. But obviously on the radio, I'm not running any processor, and the microphone itself is a little bit low. So welcome to hear any suggestions you might have for getting a little better sound out of it.
Roger that. Well, the first thing is you've got a compressor on board. Roger, roger.
Yes, sir. I don't have in the 690. There's not a lot of control over it, but there's a compressor helping keep it off the process. That's about.
All right. Turn your compressor on and put it on a 3 out of 10. Turn your compressor on and put it on a 3 out of 10. Roger. But maybe that's what we're going for, so how copy that? Okay, where is that ALC reading right now?
The ALC is actually popping out the meter, so it's the ALC range goes up about 50-60% on the meter here.
Roger, well that's exactly where you want. You want to run that ALC between mid-scale and 2/3. You want to run your ALC mid-scale to 2/3, Roger?
Alrighty, so I'm going to back off. Nah, I don't want to back off the gain there. Hang on just a second. Try this. So bringing up the gain just a little bit. So that's right there at between 1/2 and 2/3 on the ALC scale over there. How copy that?
That sounds good. That sounds good. Now tell me about your antenna just for a moment.
Yes, sir. I've got, it's my attempt to cut a resonant dipole. I was using a multi-band one-wire antenna and needed to move the radio, so had an opportunity to change the antenna setup. So I've got some old 10-gauge wire, which is a little bit heavier than needed for sure, but got it about 40 feet up from a couple of trees here, and did not use a balance, and just tied it up the old-fashioned way, and depending on aligning the arrestor and some good grounding to keep any common mode out of the shaft. But so far, I haven't had any trouble with that. I've logged, just maybe about a dozen contacts since I got that up about 3 weeks ago, but doing okay so far. Over.
Roger, roger. Okay, I would come up to a 4 on that compressor. I would come up to about a 4 on the compressor. Roger, roger.
So that's a little bit more processing right there. And that's, I got that sitting on the scale a little bit better. Is that an improvement? Over.
Yeah, I'm looking at your signal, your audio signal on a VU meter, and I can tell by that meter what your average percent of peak modulation is. And it's getting closer now. What we want to do is derive at about a 3 dB dynamic range. And that is, when you run unprocessed audio, you're running about 10 dB of signal variation. dynamic range, about 10 dB unprocessed, and hitting about 30% average peak modulation. Well, what we want to do is reduce the dynamic range, fatten the signal up so it doesn't move around quite as much, and between a little bit of compression and the ALC limiter, we usually can hit about a 3 dB dynamic range. And when you're doing about a 3 dB dynamic range, your average percent of peak modulation is somewhere around 80%. You know, we're not just talking about peak modulation, but we're talking about average peak modulation. How often do you hit that level of modulation? And that would determine the what we call the fatness of the audio signal. And the difference between unprocessed audio and a 3 dB dynamic range is it sounds probably about 2.5 times louder. Roger?
Compression control here and see if this gets closer to what you're describing. So that's about a 3 or 4 on a scale of 10 for that gain. So how is that an improvement at all?
Oh yes, I would run it. I would run it like that for a while. You know, the thing is, there is a limit of what you can do with the compressor before it starts to become a problem, and that if you over compress, you start sucking up the kids and the wife and the tarantulas and the cats and the dogs and the water pump and you know, all the power, all kinds of things that it will suck up between the words. So you don't want it to run the compressor to that state, but somewhere around a 3 or 4, and I think that 4 in your case will give you about that 3 dB dynamic range. Roger?
Very good, sir. Well, I certainly appreciate some guidance on that. Yeah, it's kind of quiet right now. Kind of got the place to myself, but I do have, like you said, the kids and the dog and the neighbors running through here sometimes. So I knew enough that I didn't want to be just driving the heck out of the mic so that I'm picking up everything around me. But if I can get a little bit more out of it, you're the gentleman that I've been wanting to talk to. And just didn't know you were out there to try and give me some guidance on how to get the best out of this. So I certainly appreciate your time today, K5MCY.
Roger. And what's the name there again?
Yeah, the name here is John. Juliet Oscar Hotel November.
Roger, John. I think that last transmission you were fairly in the clear and loud enough that you can really hear the audio. So you know, you have been recorded now. So if you go to YouTube and do a call letter search for KC9VKV, and then look for an air check called My Group Air Check 22219. That will be today's air check 22219. Roger.
Copy all that. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it, and hope to catch you another time, especially if I fool around with things here and get some more work done with it. 73's Kilo Charlie 9, Victor Kilo Victor. Much appreciated. K5MCY.
Roger. Maybe check in next week, next Friday, and we'll have enough good signal to be able to work on the EQ a little bit. It's fairly close, but we could touch it up just a tad. So, John, I'll say 3s for now, and you have a good afternoon. Roger.
Roger, all that. Thank you again. K5MCY.
Roger, John. 3s. This is Kilo Charlie 9, Victor Kilo Victor, and the Friday afternoon Qso-Vlog program, show, network, whatever it is, I'm not sure. But we are air checking between now and 5, and I just looked up at my forehead on the monitor, and I had this something terrible on my forehead, and it turned out to be the mouse emblem. When you first look at it, though, it's hard to say, wait, what is that? Anyway, so we are recording between now and 5 Eastern, so if you have a radio you want to check out the audio, give us a shout. KC9VKV.